Sean McDonough with us today. You were a chief engineer on the Great Lakes.
That's correct.
Correct? Okay.
Yep.
And how many years did you do that?
I had 22 years sailing, yes.
All right. Do people, I mean, I can remember as a kid, know a lot of people going out and sailing on the lakes. Do people do that anymore, start careers there?
Yes, they do, yeah. A lot of times they, mostly younger, not sure what they want to do after high school. We get a lot of younger people out there, 18 to 25. You know, they're still unsure what they want to do in life. They'll go out and they start earning some money, but more often than not, it's tough to be away from home. And when you're young,
like 9 months or how many?
well, yeah, it can be long. It depends on where you're positioned on a ship, and you know, if you're there as a relief, it can be harder to get off a boat. But when your first couple years, plan on spending some time out there to get your feet on the ground, and you build up a little bit of whiskers and.
Might learn a few things.
Oh yeah. And then usually after the first year or two, it's easier to to maneuver around for I think I'd like some time off here, and and you can get some vacation time. But they try to be fair with everybody, and things have changed quite a bit over the years. Now to really see somebody out there for many months at a time. It's more likely by choice, but they give the opportunity for guys to get off a little bit, because they've come to the realization that you shouldn't keep people cooped up long at one place. But it's a different lifestyle. It's very unique. I enjoyed it. I started when I was just before I turned 19, and I loved it. My father sailed for 37 years, and I always had an interest in it. I used to take trips on him. Trips with him.
I was going to ask if you went with your father.
Yeah. Early 70s through the mid 70s and that. I've been on several of the old inland steel boats that are no longer around. He was on a 1,000-footer in the 70s for a while, Presque Isle, and I used to take trips on that with him. And it was a lot of fun, and I just enjoyed being out there.
So one of the main reasons we have you on today is because today's the 40th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yes.
In Superior.
Yes.
Superior.
Yeah.
So can you kind of tell the story of that as far?
Yeah.
Your father was on a.
My father worked for Inland Steel at the time. He was on one of the vessels that actually went out to do the search for them. Really, he was about 20 miles from them at the time when they went down.
Sunk? Oh.
And so they, of course, heard the radio transmissions between the vessels and that. So, they left Superior, Burlington Northern, the day before, and they knew that there's going to be some weather, but back then it's not like we have weather apps and channels now, where you can get minute-to-minute updates. And they headed out. The storm came up pretty quickly, and they decided to take a northern route, staying lee of the wind, So they did that, but the wind switched around, and the storm became more intense than what was anticipated. And for the most part, everything that I've read and what my dad told me, they were okay. I mean, they were taking some heavy seas. You're at the time, probably 18, 22 footers out there. When you're loaded on an old steam vessel like that, there's not much freeboard. So of course you're gonna have a lot of water washing over the deck.
Yeah.
And they got down on the eastern part of Lake Superior, and they had all that wind and waves that just kept building up. They didn't report their radars had gone. One of the radars had gone out, and the other one was actually being in for repair. So they were being basically guided by the Anderson, which was a vessel that was following them. And Caribou Island, there were at the time some uncharted shoals. Some of them were only at a depth of 20 to 30 feet. Well, when you have a vessel that's loaded, to a draft of 28 feet,
it's a little.
And you're in seas that are at that point probably 25 to 30 foot seas now. You're more than likely going to touch bottom at some point, and the evidence, this theory I support is the shoaling theory, you know, because the evidence is, to me, it just seems obvious it's there. The course they were on at the time, they were too close to Caribou Island, too close to the shoals, more than what any other captain would want to be, which was also stated by Captain Cooper of the Anderson. They bounced off the shoal and they ran over some rocks, and when you're in heavy seas like that, I've been in some seas that were pretty good, and you take a pretty good bouncing around. You know, I mean, you're flipping around a little bit. The boat shudders, you know, so they might have suspected they could have hit something, but you know, dismissed it as wave action. And rocks, you know, even as thick as a steel hull is on a ship, you know, rocks can do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
And they can tear it open like
really?
Like putting a pencil through tissue. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. And I believe they bounced off after Caribou, going over those shoals. They bounced off the shoal, probably hold it on the bottom, put a hole in it, stress fracture. And with this working the seas, and now they're taking on water, indicated by Captain McSorley on the Fitzgerald saying that, you know, we have a list where we have our pumps on. Well, you know, being out there, you know, it obviously would have to be the ballast pumps, because you got your cargo hold in the middle of the ship. Ballast tanks are on the outside, and they go underneath the cargo hold. So, say if they punctured, you know, on the say it was on the port side, the left side of the ship, they could have punctured that going over a shoal, you know, put some holes in it, caused a little fracture, some cracks, and as the ship begins to, you know, still works in the sea, which they are designed to do that. You know, he did lose some tank vents, you know, so that would allow for some of the water to go into the ballast tanks. I believe that you know, as the ship was working, the cracks and the holes probably got a little bit bigger, taking on more water than what the pumps could keep up with, hence getting the list, where they had a list of the ship. Now, at that point, you're taking on water, you're getting lower and lower in the water, so you're losing your freeboard. But with seas that high, it's hard to tell. You wouldn't be able to tell. And they finally, you know, what I believe is they got so low in the water, and now the waves, you know, are just completely awash on the deck, which puts more weight on it. And the bows, you know, they're being hit from their starboard rear quarters, so you know they're being pushed. You know, waves are coming like this, and they're kind of being, you know, driven like that. And I believe that they were down so far that a larger wave probably, you know, pushed the vessel up, put the bow down into another large wave. It could not recover, and once you get too much under the water, it won't come up. It could not recover from that wave and started down. I don't believe for a second that it broke apart on the surface. I believe that the bow hit, you know, the vessel's 729 feet long. You sank in 530 feet of water. So you still had about 230 feet of that vessel, you know, that would have been, you know, if the angle would have stayed true, you know, by the time that bow hit, that the stern would have still been probably out of the water a little bit. And all that weight coupled with the 26,000 plus tons of iron ore would have accordioned the vessel, virtually disintegrating, you know, the 200 and some feet of the center section of the ship that there is just in pieces. They really can't find it, you know, and it's there. It's just, you know, gone, you know, buried in the mud and that.
Jeez.
You know, the propeller was still turning, and that probably, you know, in the water, it probably would have, you know, turtled the stern, which is why it's upside down. I mean, it would have helped to, you know, give it that extra momentum to end up on its bottom.
So how long before it sank that they realized there was trouble? I mean, this wasn't like the Titanic where we've got an hour and a half left.
Right. You know, the boat, first of all, when the vessel went down, they It was probably going at a pretty good rate of speed because of that. I mean, they probably hit the bottom. Doing 20 miles an hour. Yeah, so it was just a matter of seconds. There would have been no time, to get off a distress signal or an SOS. There was a snow squall that had gone through at that time when it got very intense, and when the Anderson lost visual of them, and it was just in minutes, when it wasn't there. And I think at that point, they probably knew in their hearts what really happened, but they're praying that it wasn't that. So they proceeded to still contact Fitzgerald, contact Coast Guard, and let them know that they had them there, and now they're not. It's just a very sad scenario all the way around.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you're out in seas like that, the guys on the boat, probably because again, I've been on some ships, I've been on some seas, and pretty much when you're bouncing around a lot, everybody's up. I mean, you're probably going to be a little bit nervous, but there are probably a lot of guys looking up porthole, just amazed at, geez, look at all this water coming on the boat. We haven't seen anything like this in quite a while. So most guys were up, but
So what time? I can't remember what time of the day it was.
It was in the evening. It was just after 7 o'clock in the evening,
Okay.
1900 hours. They pinpoint the time around 19:10, 7:10 p.m. It was on Monday, November the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They would have, they did find a body. Coast Guard had a body, a guy in a life preserver that was on the outside. He was just off the bow.
So he probably jumped out.
Well, again, with guys being nervous, they probably would have been prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear some stories of guys like, first time, we were in some big seas, and I've seen guys in survival suits. Well, a lot of times it's more exaggerated than real. But I mean, I can tell you that I have seen a person, with their survival suit, ready to go because they were very nervous. And probably back then, the guys, they would have had their life jackets, and maybe they probably thought that, well, just in case, I got it on me. And the vessel was still fairly new. It was only 17 years old.
Right.
It was a big boat, a very comfortable boat. It was modern, at that time. I mean, just it had all the bells and whistles, and and you just wouldn't think that, as people think like the Titanic, it was brand new. It was,
Right.
really a nice boat. I mean, nothing can happen to that. Well, maybe the same mentality for the Fitzgerald. There's so many theories out there of the hull. I was put together not quite right in that. These shipbuilders, they take pride in their work. Back then, you had a lot of guys that were on this boat building it. It was big, and they took pride in that. And they said, this is really going to be a good vessel to have out there. And so they're probably not going to cut corners.
Right.
More than likely not.
No. Well, were there other boats made similar to that?
Yeah, actually,
They
there
had a
was,
sister ship like.
the Arthur B. Homer was actually sister ship to it, and that went out of service, I believe, in the early '80s at some point. Bethlehem Steel had that one, but it was identical. Yeah, they're almost twins.
How long did a ship last?
Well, one of the boats I sailed on up until 2003 was built 1925.
Oh.
So they can last a while.
Yeah.
The problem is vessels, they'll last quite a while, years and years, decades out there. But then through natural attrition, streamlining, they build bigger boats that can haul more cargo, and then in a sense, the smaller vessels become much more inefficient. They
Right.
can't haul as much. It costs a little more to run because they are a little bit older, machinery's older, it takes a little more maintenance on
Something
it.
like self-unloading and that kind of stuff. Would that
Yeah, the self-unloading, that was a big turn. American Steamship really expounded on that. In the 70s, they're building vessels, self-unloaders, and that was really the way to go. And they actually saw that early on. Some of the boats, one of the first boats built was with a self-unloading was the Line Dot. It was built in the early 1900s, and at the time it was people were, it was a good idea, but but most docks had unloading equipment, so
Right.
they figured, well, we don't need that. We have the Hewletts, or we have
Right.
buckets, we can unload it.
George Hewlett from Conneaut is the
Yeah.
one who developed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're boats. Yeah, they can good life on a boat. An old steamer. 60, 70 years. You could probably get out of them. I mean, it depends on the company and how well they keep their maintenance up on them.
Now, something like the Fitzgerald, would somebody want, like make it? I don't know. Could you bid on going on a boat? Or was this a boat that would you be happy that I'm going on the Fitzgerald rather than something older?
Yeah, that vessel. There were 6 guys, 25 years and younger. So they, and most of the other guys were, they had some seniority.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a flagship of the fleet, and it had a steady run. Basically from North Superior, Duluth, right down to Toledo. They called it Toledo Express. It's one of the nicknames they had for it. And and so guys, if they lived up in Superior, and they had some seniority,
Right.
they're going to get on that boat.
Yeah.
And guys lived in Toledo. There are quite a few, including the captain. He lived down there, and so he knew that was going to be the run. Yeah, you're going to pick that boat to want to be on it. Yeah, so it's every 4 or 5 days you're gonna you'll get off and get some time at home and that. So it was a nice run, beautiful run for a long time for that boat, and because it was such a nice boat, luxurious if you want to say, the guys with seniority they'll put in for those. Yeah, so they like that.
And I would think, well, I mean, it's 40 years ago today, so it was November 10th. You don't think about it being that bad. I mean, snow and everything.
Yeah, the vessel, again, with the old steamers, they did ride low in the water when loaded. The vessels they have now, their draft 35 to 40 feet, somewhere in there. I mean, it'd be a lot of these vessels, and they're built. They can handle some seas, but the problem is the working of the vessel. And I commend the companies and the captains over the years that their safety really is first. And when there's times when there's going to be some wind, I mean, you might have some waves. If you do happen to get caught in it, you can pick your course, check down so your hull isn't working too much, and you can make it through. But a lot of guys, they'll either stay at the dock or they'll anchor, until the worst passes, and then they can continue on their way.
Is this because of the Fitzgerald?
I think a lot of that was
The design changes and
well, no, not so much a design changes. That was more for efficiency, to haul more cargo. But I think back then, and well, up until then, with these companies, the captains they got extra bonuses. If you get that cargo down there, it was more unsaid, but it was just knowing that okay, we meet your tonnage limit by this date, then a nice bonus will be coming to you.
they don't do that anymore.
No, that's a practice that has gone by the wayside. I mean, as far as I know. I mean, unless the I wasn't a captain, but
Right, yeah.
I wasn't privy to behind closed doors conversations.
Well, that's what
like that.
all the Titanic movies talk about, how there was full speed ahead because the owners of the Titanic wanted to get to New York by a certain day.
Yeah. It's always a race.
Yeah.
Everything is a race.
Wow.
And one of the I don't know if I'll call it proclivity, but like in the engine room, you're as an engineer, you're more in tune with how the vessel is. I mean, you can see how it's working, you can see the machinery, and when the machinery is being pushed. So the fact that as an engineer and you have the deck department You know, and I'm not trying to, say the deck department is, I'm not trying to step on any toes or anything, but, a lot of times it's not really understood, that you can't, it's like driving a car, we can't keep it to the floor all the time.
Right.
Something's going to happen, something's going to break, it's going to wear out. So, even if you can just back it off a little bit, and, not cruise, not race like you're, like it's the last day on Earth all the time. But, back then it was all about getting to the dock first, getting the tonnage in. And even now, they have boats, they call it racing ballast, where they'll pump out and they'll have the back end, the stern squatted down pretty good, the bow high, and, they get controllable pitch so they can, maximize, engine RPM with the pitch on the propeller to get the speed they want. We used to always say that, geez, if you wanted to get to the dock early, you should have left fit out a day earlier.
Yeah.
But so there's always there's always some animosity between deck department, engine department, but nowadays, and seeing how things are out there, it's pretty relaxed. Everybody gets along. These companies, they're no longer attuned to having a cowboy for a captain, or I'm going to go out in every storm there is. I don't care how big the seas are. I'm going to get that cargo through. You don't see that anymore. They don't like promoting that. Number one, insurance reasons alone will put a stop to a lot of that. But a lot of these guys now, you're starting to get a lot younger generation coming in, younger captains, and it's more safety, keep the vessel moving, no downtime, and if you push a vessel too far, then that's what you'll have. So,
did you tell them, hold on a minute, we need to pull back a little bit? When you were an engineer?
Yeah, actually when I was chief, there was one time in particular, we were headed up Superior, and we were probably running into, the vessel again was only 600 and some footer, it was very old, 1925. We were probably in some 12 to 15 foot seas. We were going full speed, and I remember it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the boat was just getting pounded. I could feel the shuddering, I can hear the banging, and we're rolling a little bit. And I called down the engine room, and I said, did we check back or anything? We're really taking a pretty good beating up here. We can, I can feel it. And he said, no, we're still full speed. So then I called up to the pilot house. I talked to the mate on watch, and I said, hey, we're really, the boat's kind of low. We're taking a heck of a beating back here. You think we could check it back some? And as a chief, it really wasn't my place to do that, but I knew the age of the vessel, and a boat can't take a pounding like that without doing something. And it had been going on for a little while, and I sensed there was no initiative up forward to do anything, so I made the call. And I said, gosh, we're, it's really bouncing pretty good. I looked out on the deck, it was working pretty good. And finally got the captain up there, and then he finally checked it back. The captain was sleeping, and he had a long day in rivers. He was pretty tired. But the mate.
But nobody said mind your own business or anything like that.
No. It's just. But sometimes it can happen. You get guys that if they have an order, okay. At a certain point, we're full speed, and then they leave it there. They don't want to touch it.
Right.
Yeah, captain. Full speed, we can't do anything. And unfortunately, sometimes it does take an outside voice to, hey, look, we need to maybe just cut her back a little bit. We're getting beat up here pretty good. So. And I was actually one of the times where, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to galley, and I saw a guy there with, he had a survival suit, because he was getting very uncomfortable with the ride, and and we were taking some seas, but not bad. But it was just the the pounding,
Yeah.
on an old boat
Better
like
be
that.
safe than sorry.
Yeah, an old boat like that being riveted together. I mean, you don't want to be walking around with coffee cans picking up rivet heads and wondering where they all came from.
Do the ships, do they get, they call them boats or ships? I don't,
You can call it ships, boats,
Well-
vessels. Yeah.
all right, okay.
Yeah.
So I know that some, you call it the wrong thing, you get.
Yeah.
Is there a regular maintenance, at different ports?
No, all the maintenance is done on board by the engineers, by the engine crew, deck crew also. They have everybody has their own duties of things that they need to keep up with.
So doesn't they pull in someplace? And,
No, it's a 24/7 operation during the season. Now sometimes there can be repairs that require more than what the crew is able to handle. It's a bigger job, and at that point you do have to suck it up and we got some downtime. We got to head to the shipyard to get something done. A lot of things like that could be like bow thruster seals. You don't want oil leaking.
No.
Sometimes going over. Going in the channel where if the wind's blowing just the right way, it drops the water level, and you could go and you're scraping bottom or on the mud net, and you come back and your prop might take a chunk out of a rock, or a rock took a chunk out of the prop, and then all of a sudden you have a vibration and you have to get that checked out.
Yeah.
But no,
it's like my lawnmower hitting a rock.
Yeah. But 99% of the time, you're taking care of the maintenance on a vessel, and the goal is to keep that vessel going and to keep it moving. Companies love it when there's no downtime, and and so your best times for repairs are when you're in port, whether you're loading or unloading. Most machinery is shut down. And if you have some things that you need to do, oil changes, preventative maintenance, stuff like that, that can always be done then. A lot of times on the run, if there's some deck winches, they need some attention. That's the best time to take care of those, because again, those are very important. You want those to work, when you're at a dock, always. So pretty much, we can run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and if you have a good year, you don't hit the shipyard at all. You don't have to.
Are there shipyards every?
Well, there's a few around the lakes. You can actually go into Cleveland Ship Repair. You have Toledo, big shipyard there, and Fraser up in Superior.
Okay.
They have dry docks. Those two have dry docks, and Sturgeon Bay, Bay ship. And every winter they're busy. As in the winter time, that's when the companies can get the major work done. Yeah. So
Okay. Sean McDonough is with us. He is retired chief engineer on the lakes.
Yes.
And we were talking about working on the lakes specifically because today is the 40th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And it's kind of significant that it is it was 40 years ago, and it was the last sinking of a ship. So somebody must have done something right since then, or we've been all incredibly lucky. Or...
The last sinking, total loss of life, and a lot of things have changed since then. Safety definitely became more prominent. It was always there, but it really come a long way. The company, like I said earlier, companies and crew members have done a fantastic job, keeping not only themselves but their vessel safe, cargo safe. So they've come to a point now where they actually have a happy medium, for everybody.
Now your father, you mentioned, was on a ship that was near the Fitzgerald when it went down.
Yes.
So tell me he must have had lots of stories about that. What the weather was that night and what he saw. And...
Yeah, I used to talk to him and about it, and I'd pick his brain, and he said that he had seen a lot of November storms, and he said that waves, especially the northwest winds coming, and hitting the eastern part of the lake, that's where the biggest buildup was. He said, but there were storms that were worse, and there were storms that that were about the same. It's just unfortunate that you know, that was a fairly large storm.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, my father says, you know, it's just wasn't uncommon to have, you know, a severe storm like that at that time. You know, he says, you know, wave heights can change, you know, depending on wind direction, you know, the way the dynamics of a storm are. But you know, he's been in seas where they've been 25, 30-foot waves too. You know, but unfortunately, this claimed a crew and its vessel.
So nobody was saying, like, my God, if we don't watch it, that ship's going to sink. Nobody was thinking in that kind
of. You know, I mean, they you know, even as captains, you know, and it's kind of an unsaid, unwritten, but you know, you really don't slam other guys for decisions they make, especially captains. You know, I mean, these guys have had long careers out there. You know, and back then, you know, everybody says, well, you know, McSorley was a cowboy. You know, he liked going out in storms. Well, you know, back then, who didn't? I mean, everybody went out. You know, for the most part. You know, you might have had a few that would, you know, they would hold back, or you know, but you know, a lot of those captains, you talk to them, they said, oh yeah, you know, if we had a cargo to deliver and a place to be, we just went. You know, we plan our route and go.
Right.
You know, so it wasn't uncommon, you know, to see ships just going out like that.
So he got to the scene of the sinking. I mean, did he see?
Yeah, it was later that night they got there.
Did he see like debris floating? And...
No. They were there were a few vessels that were actually, you know, close to where they were, and they were the vessel he was on, you know, kind of was doing a broad, you know, around. So they didn't see anything, but they all kept in radio contact, and you know, so he would know when he was a mate at the time, and you know, so he knew when things were found, you know, when they would pick stuff up, you know, so he could hear all that. But and he said, you know, the seas were pretty bad. He said, but you know, you go out and you know, and it's a loss of life. He said, and you know, you do anything for your family out there,
right.
You know, and help them and hope that maybe you can find somebody in survival suits or rafts.
And you said they found somebody, one person?
Yeah, they found one person. He was actually laying on the bottom, off the bow, you know, on the lake floor, skeletonized.
So this was...
Yeah, this is a while after, you know, when they went down, they shot a lot of video of it, and you know, but he did have a life preserver on, and what was left, they said it looked like probably coveralls on him, you know, what was left of the clothing.
So probably everybody had gotten up and gotten dressed. Well, it was 7 o'clock, and I'm sorry, that's right. So it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like Betty by time yet.
Right, you know, and guys that probably would have been normally sleeping any other day, I'm sure that, you know, they probably more than likely would have been up.
Yeah.
You know, because it's hard to sleep when you're
yeah.
messing around like that.
It's not like a lullaby.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So what other things did your father talk about that as far as?
He just.
Did he know people that were on the
yeah,
ship?
yeah, and actually, he did a relief job in 1969 on Fitzgerald, so he'd actually been on it.
All right.
And he said it was a very nice boat. You know, he said good crew, good boat. You know, and then he went over to Inland Steel, worked with them for several years. He you know, he felt bad that it happened, but you know, again, it's you don't stop, you don't slow down. It's kind of business. You know, you just keep going.
Right.
But I do believe that, you know, from that single event, again, the safety measures were much more enforced. You know, and you know, captains, you know, being told that, you know, let's make some, or crews being told that let's make some better decisions about how we can keep things safe. You know, we don't want to see this again. You know, unfortunately, nothing has happened like that.
So, how old were you then? You were at home.
Yeah, I was 9 years old.
Okay.
Actually, I was. You know, I I remember that day so well.
I was just wondering, your mother must have been worried at first.
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, she was. You know, we got out of school that day, and I was born and raised in Manistee, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and so I was right up there. You know, and I just remember the wind was just incredible. You know, we come out of school that day and walking, and you know, in town we had this. It was like a 40-foot statue of Paul Bunyan made out of plywood. And I remember part of it came loose, his leg, when he was kicking. I don't know, we're kids, you know, we're laughing. Like, oh, put a
Kicking a football.
Yeah, put a kickball in front of it, see how far it goes. But I remember going home, you know, from school, and it was, I want to say probably 9, 10 o'clock at night. You know, my mom, it came on the news, and then shortly after, I think it was before 11, my dad had called from Ship to Shore Radio and said that you know, that he was fine, their boat was fine. They're actually heading out to, you know, they're going to go do a search, and but she was worried. Yeah, I mean, because you know, she knew that he was up there, you know, somewhere, you know, on an older boat, you know, that they had.
Right.
So, but she's relieved, and when he called.
You know, I don't remember the words right off, but the Gordon Lightfoot song, when they talk about the mothers and daughters and stuff, and they must have been the Fitzgerald that night. You know,
Yeah.
clinging to hope maybe that some of them had survived,
Right.
and because you mentioned there's a lot of kids like in their 20s. And,
Yeah. You know, you hold out hope, you know, because you know, it's just as instinct. You know, you don't want to think the worst. You don't want to you know, to believe any different than that. You know, hey, you know, they could be in a lifeboat. You know, they could be in a raft, or you know, there's vessels out there. You know,
there were lifeboats in all these.
Oh yeah. There were. There's actually 2 lifeboats on the port and starboard on the stern, and inflatable life rafts, where when a vessel goes down, they'll actually they'll pop loose from their cradle and they'll go up. But you know, like I say, the boat goes down so fast, and you know, when it takes some of that stuff it takes down, you know, you might have flotation devices like the person in the life preserver, and some people say, well, gee, if you had a life preserver on, you should have went to the top. Well, you have to understand the amount of water pressure, you know, down at 500 feet.
Right.
You know, unless you strap 2 empty 55-gallon drums to you, probably more than likely won't come up. You know, this buoyancy's just not there. It's just too much weight. But yeah, it was. Yeah, my dad would. He talked about a little bit, and he just enjoyed the you know, sailing career, and he kind of like, yeah, it was really an unfortunate thing, but you know, it's at that point he'd been doing it for quite a while, and he's, you know, I'm just going to keep going, and you know, hopefully it's not going to happen again.
Now, the local impact, there were 3 people from Ashtabula.
Well, 2 I know for sure. There was a watchman and a deckhand, but I think there were 3. I think maybe 2 deckhands and a watchman. There was a fellow named Ripa, Peckle, and I think Peckle might have been the watchman. And there's another one, off the top of my head, I can't think what the name was right now.
But the Fitzgerald did dock in Ashtabula.
Yeah, they've made trips down here. Yeah. They come into the to the Ashtabula, to the lakefront there, and you know, unload ore. Yeah, wherever is needed. I mean, you know, their main run was from Superior, Wisconsin, down to Toledo. But eventually, every once in a while, you know, they'd get, you know, hey, we need a shipping over Ashtabula, or, you know, we need something over in Conneaut. You know, Detroit, you know, that was Zug Island was another one, big plant, steel mill over there they took to. The Rouge, you know, they take them up there. Yeah, wherever cargo was needed, you know, they would go.
Okay, quick, we gotta go to another break. Maybe we can hold you for a little bit longer. Maybe we can just talk about shipwrecks in general in the lake. And
Sure.
all right,
sure.
The 40th anniversary of Edmund Fitzgerald, and I wanted to talk about shipwrecks on the lakes in general. I mean, I can remember looking at old newspapers, and there just seemed like there were an awful lot of them going back to the turn of the 19th, 20th century and all. And you had some interesting statistics. How many shipwrecks are there on the Great Lakes?
I believe there are over 6,000
shipwrecks.
And again, this is going back to the early days of frontiersmen, 1700s and that. It's the greatest amount of shipwrecks concentrated in an area than any other place in the world. There are more shipwrecks on the Great Lakes than any other place in the world.
You're talking about not wanting to be a cowboy out on the lake anymore, but and I haven't done a whole lot of research, but I can picture, like, I know the harbor in Conneaut, the harbor in Ashtabula, they were rough and tumble places. Mm-hmm. When you had the railroad disaster, they brought people up and set them in bars and victims and different things. And so I don't know, they're drinking hard, they're fighting, and then they're going out on ships, and then they get sunk.
Yeah, the old stories, sailors cuss like a sailor, drink like a sailor. That's these guys are out on a boat for they're working hard. And it's you're basically every day, every minute, every hour you're doing something. And little sleep and a lot of work to be done, so they look for that release, mm-hmm. and they find it. Mm-hmm. They get in the ports and they go to the bars.
I mean that back, like I'm thinking like 1900, 1910, or 1890s or whatever. But the boats were different too. I mean, you had a lot more. We haven't had one for 40 years, but you definitely had more than that.
Oh yeah. They back early days, Great Lakes vessels being built, cargo vessels. You had you wouldn't hold ships, and they went over to steel. But you have to think these vessels were much smaller. Anywhere from the 300 to 500 foot range. Which at the time, with our technology, that was a rather large mm-hmm. vessel. And they had steam plants in them. All of them. Reciprocating. Most of them were triple expansions. They didn't have a lot of horsepower. So even though the ship at the time was, the modern marvel, you went out and you get into a 50, 60, 70 mile an hour wind, you might have that, that little 1,200 horse engine, trying to push that 500 foot boat. And, mm-hmm. A lot of times it's just too much for it. I mean, there are vessels that were actually, full speed in some of these storms, and they've driven backwards, and and actually, been beached, and just, and that's where some of these life-saving stations they used to have around the lakes, because a lot of times ships would be, they would be pushed, onto shore or onto the rocks, just offshore and that, and these crews would be stranded out there, so these life-saving stations would help them out. We either send over some supplies for them, or just get the crew off the boat before it got too beat up on the rocks by waves. The size and horsepower, horsepower just they just didn't put it in there for them, so they some of them would struggle.
Well, they did the best they could with that technology at the time.
Yeah.
And with 6,000, it seems like a lot of those are there waiting to cause problems still. We were talking about the 19th ship from 1937 that was down. Was that around Toledo?
Yeah, so
it's causing an oil problem.
Yeah, I've been in the papers recently. It was a barge that had sunk.
Okay.
I believe it had just been swamped by some waves, and it sunk in 1937. It was up on Kelly's Island, on the western end of Lake Erie, and they found a leak. They saw some oil coming up from it, so they sent divers down and they found a pinhole leak, and they plugged it. I'm not an EPA specialist, but I think the problem is still there.
Well, didn't something like the next day that they went back down and were going to do something else?
You know, I don't know. I didn't read that, but I would hope that they have plans to
something
now that
more
they
than-
have more than just plugging the leak, because you still have oil that could cause a big problem. I mean, the vessel's been down there since 1937.
Right.
It's in fresh water, not too deep of water, and the rust will eventually. I mean, that plug might hold, but another one might spring up. So I would hope that they're making plans to to remove the rest of the contaminants from it.
I mean, that's almost 80 years that's been down there.
Yeah.
So we've probably been lucky that there haven't been more problems like that with all of those ships, with all that pressure from the lake.
Right. You know, and a lot of vessels that went down back then, I mean, they, there probably were the fuel oil and the oil that would have leaked out, just over the years and just dissipated, or,
Right.
so. But yeah, that barge, I know it's older, but it is more of a recent, vessel that went down. And I'm not sure. It looked by the sonar imaging they showed of it. It looked like it might have been some kind of petroleum type barge. So yeah, I would think that they're probably making some plans to remove the rest.
There's some kind of an announcement by the Coast Guard that people in the area may smell a gasoline type smell, and that it is not dangerous, but if you feel ill, seek medical attention.
Right. Yeah, because again, as that comes up, it just creates a sheen on the water. One drop of oil, can you drop one drop of oil on water and it can really cover up big areas. So, and this was a small leak that went on for a little bit. So yeah, there's probably some out there still on the surface that are just pulled around. And
we have a rich history on the Great Lakes of shipping and all. And I know, and we need to let you go, but you also volunteer at the museum, Marine Museum,
Yes.
here on Ashtabula Harbor. I went down there and met with Bob Frisbee, and he gave me a tour of the place, and I was going to do a video on it, and I ended up doing two because there's just too much, like two 20-minute videos, and I didn't do it all justice, and there's plans for expansions and everything else.
yes, yeah, the Ashtabula Maritime Marine and Surface Transportation Museum, also known as the Ashtabula Maritime Museum. We have several rooms. There are thousands of items, artifacts, from shipping, railroad history also, and we are planning a expansion, $1.5 million expansion on the education wing that they want to build. And so we're doing some fundraising now and some different events and gathering support for that, so we can make that happen. It's wonderful. It's really a great place to visit.
It is.
I mean, it's Memorial Day through the end of September, weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, noon to 5. September they go to Saturday, Sundays, but it's a great place to, if you're really interested in the maritime history of the Great Lakes, and there's even some just merchant marine from all over. It's a wonderful place to see. There's lots of things to look at. There's tons of pictures, just points of interest all over the museum. I mean, you could spend a lot of time in there.
Yeah,
just looking at
definitely.
things.
Yeah.
And some of the displays are just incredible. Some of the handmade displays that are there.
Now, I noticed from the website too, they say that for like school groups and stuff, they will open other times of the year.
Yes, groups.
So, I mean, that would be, if you're in school, you're in school right
Yeah,
now, but
yeah.
that would be a good thing, a good field trip.
Oh yeah.
And let kids know about the heritage of the area.
Right. Yeah, it's great. That'd be a wonderful field trip because in the schools around the region, they probably do teach a little bit of Great Lakes history because it's here. It's here for us. This is what we live in. It's just our region. But yeah, it's great. If teachers, you want to plan something for, an hour or two out of the day for the kids, you can call and set up and schedule reservations, and I volunteer there. We have a few other people, and we'd love to make that happen and teach a little history and hopefully expand some knowledge out there for some of our local youth. So, yeah, and even local people that might not know
Right.
much
Absolutely.
about the maritime history.
You said that schools probably, I hope they do,
Yeah.
but these days they're all teaching to a test, and
Yeah.
hopefully they're not ignoring the what's going on here and the
Right,
history
right.
of the area.
And I think local interest, local history is big. If we don't keep it, we're going to lose it.
Yeah.
And if we don't teach our young ones and our children, that's going to be it.
Right.
And it'll be lost.
We got a phone call. Hopefully it's about what we're talking about. Hello, you're on the air.
Are we talking about the Edmund Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Well, that was quite a thing that they had years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It sunk November 10th, 1975,
Yep.
530 feet, and there was 28 men on it.
Yep. 40 years ago today.
Yeah, Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yep.
Yeah, that was quite a disaster. It's in the Canadian waters, right?
Yes.
Canadian people don't know even taking videos or diving around it. They've got that water area restricted. I had a story years ago between Konya and Canada and Dunkirk. There was more ships sunk in that triangle than the Bermuda Triangle. That was a story I had years ago in this house.
Huh. I can believe it.
Many years ago. All right. So
All right.
Another thing. This is, I think, yesterday. November 9th, 1965 is when all the power went out.
Yes.
And that was 50 years ago.
Yep.
Canada and around American subways and elevators, everything.
Boston, New York.
Northcoast.
Yeah.
Movie theaters. Well, that was 50 years ago.
Yep. You're right. Oh, are you gone? Okay. Yeah, I remember I used to listen, I discovered the radio about that time, and I was listening to WBZ in Boston from Konya.
Oh.
It was one of those clear channel stations that power was, and you could pick it up at night, and you were hearing all about what was going on in Boston, and if you have neighbors, please check in on them, and we got this report about this, and it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was I don't know how many hours that lasted.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was
And I don't know that they've ever found out what the heck caused it all.
Yeah, maybe somebody threw a wrong switch, or and nobody wanted to fess up to it.
Yep, absolutely.
Or playing ball in a power plant.
It went off, I think, earlier in New York, and then it went off in Boston.
Yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate you coming in and
Thank you.
talking about kind of a watershed moment, and from what you described, it was a time when safety may have been important before November 10th, 1975, but after November 10th, 1975, it became even more important.
Much more prominent, yes.
So the whole time that you were out on the lakes, they emphasized safety.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's that was very, very big now. These companies have really, like I say, I commend them. They've put a lot of time and effort, a lot of money into ensuring the safety of the crew and the vessels.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's been interesting. We'll be back for